saying you might miss.
But we all get a trophy.
Everybody made it.
It's true.
It's harder than it looks to pick that ball up with a stick.
It's not easy. Yeah.
First try, I didn't get it.
We were hanging out
Then
with
I
the
got it.
Major League Lacrosse folks, and they brought us some awesome jerseys.
Thanks for the mug,
Yes,
too.
the jerseys are
And
really
Ed
cool.
is sporting the mug that I got him this morning.
The
Trump
tweet mug.
Witch hunt. It's in honor of the conclusion of Mueller's.
This tweet had over 101,000 likes and over 22,000 retweets. So you see it right there.
And it's for the one and only Ed Henry this morning.
How about that?
There you go.
Can you see it? How awesome is
You've
that?
given me so many gifts.
It beats the used waffle maker, though. You have
It
to
is.
admit
It's
that.
better. It's a new mug. It appears to be a new mug.
You never know, but it appears that way.
Yeah.
You deserve it.
I
In honor of Trump's approval rating at an all-time or a 2-year high.
Absolutely. There you go. And this is a president. Obviously, we've seen new tariffs by tweet. This is a tweet mug. President really putting the heat on Mexico, pressing them and saying we're going to see tariffs of 5% that will keep escalating, eventually reaching 25% if Mexico doesn't wake up and start cracking down on the illegal immigration problem
That's right.
crossing the border.
Big news there. Secretary of State, their foreign minister, headed to Washington for discussions about that. And the context for it all is this crisis is only getting worse at the southern border. In fact, a headline from CBS says surge of migrants at the southern border. Migrants apprehended expect to hit 12-year high. Trump's been talking about this. Then Republicans were talking about it. Democrats are finally admitting it from the former Obama administration.
This video from this week.
Footage like that. And now even the media has to acknowledge it is out of control.
Yeah, we had Dan Bongino on, and he was talking about how the Democratic talking point that the crisis isn't real, well, it's not any good. Take a listen.
Where the dam really broke on this, Ed, the whole Democrat focus group tested talking point that don't worry, there's not a crisis, there's nothing to see here, was Jay Johnson. Of course, Jay Johnson being Barack Obama's former Department of Homeland Security head, who came out and said, listen, this is clearly a crisis. We have literally, not figuratively, thousands of people entering the country. We have no idea who they are. And people are coming here who need serious medical attention. You have children not prepared for the journey. It's a humanitarian crisis. And listen, they're running out of talking points now. It is a crisis. Everybody knows it.
You know, we just had Charles Payne on the show. He said that the fear-mongering that these tariffs are going to hurt our economy is, he said, it's BS. He said most of the hurt is going to be felt in Mexico, which is the entire point. Get after the problem that you have, and maybe in the meantime, you'll pay for our wall, too.
Think about how much this conversation has shifted, though, from initially being called a manufactured crisis. Democrats thought, oh, we're just going to push this under the rug, to now you having several members of the former Obama administration coming out and validating, yes, in fact, this is a crisis. Yes, in fact, we do need to do something about this. This is now a situation that no one can ignore, and that is why President Trump has resorted to this stance on tariffs. This may not have been, in fact, it wasn't how he wanted to address this initially. He wanted to deal with Congress. He wanted some sort of compromise. He could not get any help.
Emergency.
He declared an emergency. He faced obstruction at every turn from Congress, from the courts. This is where he's at now because he's tired of dealing with this crisis and having nothing get done about it because he gets no help. So he's saying, look, this is my last option. I'm going for it. I made a campaign promise. I want it fulfilled.
This is what it looks like when a president actually tries to do what he said he was going to do, which is what politicians almost never do. But of course, the president's a businessman who said, I made a bargain with the American people to build this wall. I'm being obstructed. And, you know, the obstruction is everywhere. You look at this private group, We Build the Wall, that built over Memorial Day. The government previously had said that was land that you couldn't build a wall on. Like, even the administrative state holds back what this president can do. He's determined.
A businessman president, but there are a lot of businessmen and women who are now saying, wait a second, this will have a harsh impact on American consumers.
We'll
see as that plays out. A lot of other news.
Which is a fair point. And that is a fair point. Many people objecting to it on a policy basis, but also those people should do diligence and should report on the fact that the reason the president is doing it is because he felt like he had no choice. Because if he had gotten help in another form, that would not be happening right now.
He's only getting resistance.
All right, so straight to a Fox News alert for you now on this 9 a.m. hour. Moments ago, police giving brand new information on the shooting at the municipal building in Virginia Beach.
Officers and city leaders identifying all 12 victims. Mark Meredith joins us live in Virginia Beach. Mark.
Pete, it was an emotional news conference because police went one by one with each of the 12 victims, showing their photos, if they had worked at the city, what their job title was, how long they had worked there. Investigators trying to make a point here that these were public servants that were gunned down doing their job, because these people that were doing the news conference here, they knew these people. These are people that they've worked with on a daily basis in this community. And they said this is also something that is going to be very hard for them to recover from, if ever. This is what they had to say just moments ago.
I have worked with most of them for many years. We want you to know who they were, so in the days and weeks to come, you will learn what they meant to all of us.
These were people that were engineers, they were account clerks, they were contractors. Their families were notified overnight. Investigators say it has been very hard for them because, again, as they know these people, but also the psychological and the emotional toll this has taken on investigators as they went through the crime scene all night long. We've also learned some new information within the last hour. Police identifying the gunman who was there responsible for this shooting. They say he was a 15-year veteran of the city. He was an engineer. This is something that they will still be trying to figure out in terms of a motive. What would have provoked somebody to do something like this? There had been speculation yesterday that maybe he was no longer an employee, but the investigators said that he was still an active employee with the city when he went into this municipal building yesterday. So still a lot of questions in terms of motive that have yet to be answered. Investigators say it's going to take time for them to piece this together. They also released some, they said that they recovered some more weapons from the suspect's home, but when pressed about what was recovered, investigators said they were unable to release that information at this time. Guys?
All right, Mark Meredith on the ground for us from Virginia Beach. Still the early stages of this investigation. They were supposed to be this Saturday in Virginia Beach. The police department was going to be doing an active shooter drill, so that the people of the community would know how the law enforcement officials would react, what people are supposed to do, how you shelter into place. Tragically, it happened 24 hours earlier that they had a real-life tragedy.
Yeah, our thoughts and prayers are with them, which, of course, still matter in moments like this. And we remember the courage of police officers and others who charge toward the gun.
Yeah, I always tip my hat to law enforcement, the incredible job that they do on days like this when it's under the worst circumstances, most tragic of circumstances. They step up to the plate and they get the job done. Really appreciate that all over the country.
Well, back to politics. It appears a majority of the American people will tip their hat at President Trump and his handling of the economy. A new poll, Harvard-Harris poll, just came out, and it's big numbers for the president on the economy. 59% approve of his handling of the economy, just 41% disapprove.
Yeah, and the strength of the economy itself at large, 71% saying it's strong, 29% saying it's weak. And Charles Payne was on the program just a short time ago saying that the key here is that we've heard the president's critics after the tax cut, after he cut regulations, saying people are not actually going to get it in their pockets, in their pocketbooks, that this is something only going to help the rich. Charles says the opposite is happening. Watch.
I really think we're on an amazing economic roll. It's beyond phenomenal. And there are some entities out there that do this stuff. You know, they've done it for a long time without any political bias. And what you're saying is that the bottom 2/3 of household incomes are the ones that are feeling it the most, the ones that are more confident and more upbeat about all of this.
Yeah, and we heard that it was only going to help the rich, Jedediah, and yet he's pointing out lower and middle classes are feeling it. And let's not forget the unemployment rate that we've been seeing month after month being historically low, also showing wages coming up, which is important.
This is why Democrats are talking about impeachment and talking about investigations and talking about tax returns, because this is very difficult to beat. When you have an economy that is soaring, when you have a voting population that is happy with the economy, that are happy with their tax situation, that feel they have more money in their pocket, that is very difficult to go out and campaign against. And now when you look at President Trump's approval rating, it's now at 48% approval, which is pretty high. It's one of the highest in the last, how long is it?
The highest in 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
Right.
Okay, so when you look at that and you look at these serious topics that he's addressing, not only economy, but immigration, if I were a Democrat right now, if I were one of those Democrats that were running in 2020, I would be wondering, what do I talk about? Because every issue that I approach, it looks like the voting public is on President Trump's side. If I come out and I advocate for an issue from the opposite direction, that's not going to work very well for me. Maybe that's why Vice President Biden
I was just going to say, Joe Biden found a solution. He just ain't talking.
Yes, right.
Joe Biden said, I don't even want to try to campaign against this. When you consider the harassment and resistance this president has faced, that number is phenomenal, and gives him a strong backup for 2020. It is amazing, though. If you can make all the cases about Biden's, and Ed, you look at this stuff closely. He's running a smart campaign. He's got 100% name ID. You know, he's got a lot of support. But ultimately, if your strategy is to hide your candidate,
what's he hiding from?
Why is he hiding?
Well,
Why isn't he making a proactive case?
They don't want more gas.
That is not a confident view of your front runner.
It's smart, though. It's smart
weird.
because
is it smart,
it's
or are you
self-aware.
prolonging the pain?
No,
because eventually
Hillary
he's going
Clinton
to
tried
fall.
that, and she was sort of in hiding for a while.
Self-aware.
She didn't want to take questions, and then as she waited and got closer to the election, it started hitting her harder and
And
harder.
then she
so
lost.
Biden's going to have to come out.
Yeah,
eventually.
but anyone who has listened to Biden over the last 10 years and
Yeah,
how
but it's not smart
gap-prone
for
he is,
Democrats.
it might be smart for him though if
Smart
he
for him.
knows that if by going out there he only stands to decrease his popularity. He's going to get tough questions about the crime bill. He's going to be asked about his record and his legacy. That's going to be a lot more moderate than he thinks his base wants to hear right now.
He wants
That
to
is going to
survive
be he
the
wants to survive, and
primary.
he's got a huge lead. So he's saying to himself, "What do I have to lose? Let me sit back. Let's see if anybody can even catch me on my tail before I go out there and start making blunders."
Hey, Biden, where are you? Why are you not in California with the rest of your Democrats at the California
I
convention?
don't think he's going to answer you.
I just know it. I think everyone needs to start asking that question.
Yeah.
Where in the world are
He's
you?
talking to himself
Where in the
again.
world are you? That's
Joe,
All
we're
right.
looking for you.
Oh boy, we've got some headlines for you now. The search intensifying for a missing Connecticut mother of 5. Police now reportedly treating the disappearance of Jennifer Dulos as a homicide after finding traces of blood in her home. New York criminal defense attorney Kenneth E. Belkin joined us earlier with the latest on the investigation.
There was evidence that someone had tried to clean that blood up. And they're probably going to, at some point, maybe do a swab on Mr. Dulos, the husband, and see if his DNA was at the scene.
Dulos disappeared last Friday after dropping her kids off at school. She reportedly lived in fear of her estranged husband while going through a bitter divorce. The Illinois Senate approves an abortion rights bill overnight. The Democratic governor is expected to sign the measure, giving women the fundamental right to get an abortion. This comes as Planned Parenthood wins a court order to keep Missouri's last abortion clinic open. It was set to lose its license and close the doors for good last night. A court hearing is set for Tuesday. And check your fridge. More than 31,000 pounds of ready-to-eat chicken is being recalled. Officials say there could be bone material in certain packages of Purdue's gluten-free chicken tenders, whole grain nuggets, and whole grain strips. The USDA says the chicken hasn't made anyone sick yet, but you should throw it out.
Oh boy.
I think it says it's
Oh
gluten-free.
boy. No. Chicken is by nature. It's the
Oh, is it
breading
really?
that's gluten-free.
I didn't even know that.
And Basketball Hall of Famer Scottie Pippen names a 5-year-old girl in a lawsuit. He claims she scribbled on the walls of his $10 million mansion with markers and crayons. Wow. Pippen's lawsuit claims her family caused more than $109,000 in damage. They were renting his Florida mansion after their home was damaged by Hurricane Irma in 2017.
Huh. I think they should have messed with his property, but you want to sue a 5-year-old or
Probably
name
not.
her in the
More
Great
to the
idea.
story than that.
Yeah,
I
something
think,
else is
probably.
going to probably emerge.
All right. 2020 Democrat Joe Biden. You know his name?
Biden.
Biden. Okay. Hitting the campaign trail down in Texas, but it is the Lone Star State even in play for Democrats.
We're asking a Texas state commissioner who's vowing to keep the state red straight ahead.
That lead guitar is hot.
Well, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, a lot of states have been passing stronger pro-life legislation, and it's gotten a national response as states have done that. A lot of these states hoping for an eventual Supreme Court challenge. Well, as conservative states have protected life, California has gone in the other direction. Here's a proclamation from Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This is what they had to say about the abortion debate. Welcoming women to California to fully exercise their reproductive rights and acting as a model for other states that want to ensure full reproductive freedom for women. So they're saying, come to California for your abortion.
They're also using the word fully and full, and I'd like to know what that means. Does that mean that he's advocating for late-term abortion? Because the conversation on the left has been a very extremist language conversation. This
Yes.
is not a safe, legal, and rare conversation anymore. These are people on the left talking about, you know, do babies, some in Virginia talking about do babies even have rights after they're born, and framing that as a women's rights debate and not a human right debate for that child. So I'm curious to know what he means by fully. I know he's trying to be politically correct and he's trying to sound cool and he's trying to get all of these Hollywood businesses want to invest their money in California, but I don't know. I mean, I see that a pro-life trend is emerging in this country across the
wonder
board.
about his priorities too, because California being a sanctuary state, you've seen Kate Steinle,
Terrible.
Officer Singh, all of these people who've been killed by illegal immigrants in that sanctuary state,
Yeah.
which he doesn't tend to focus on.
I want to make a small correction from when we talked about this earlier, because I called it an abortion sanctuary state. I don't think that's fair. Illegals in California are getting sanctuary. But for that baby that's in California, there is no sanctuary.
Correct.
Ultimately, If you believe that baby is a life, and maybe you call it at the heartbeat, as many of these bills do, then there's no sanctuary for life in California.
And to Jed's point, California being where Hollywood is based, you have various companies like Disney, Netflix, others saying, look, Georgia was one of the first states to restrict abortion rights with new state laws. And they make a lot of movies there. And they're starting to say, wait a second, maybe we will take the money out of Georgia and won't shoot our movies and our TV shows there. Well, Rush Limbaugh says, hang on a second, Disney, you're being hypocrites. Watch.
This is just, it's hypocritical and crazy. Disney is a company founded on programming and facilities for children. And the abortion law in Georgia is designed to save and protect children. And we can't have that. We can't have, the way Disney's looking at this, we can't have our audience protected. We can't do business in a state that's looking out for our audience and our future audience. We can't have. We've got to leave that state.
You know, Tucker was pointing out as well, you've got Netflix and all these companies doing business with China and others where they don't seem to care that much about human rights, you know, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, reproductive rights. This is the ultimate issue, which is going to decide where we shoot our films. They'll do business with China or anybody else.
This is a very thought-provoking point from Rush, though. It really makes you think. Disney should really be thinking about who is their audience. I mean, when he's talking about, you know, you think of Disney, you think of Cinderella, you think of Snow White. These are children's movies. They are known most for their children's films. And here they are making a business decision that may not be popular with their audience. Of course, they can do whatever they want as a business. They can decide to pull out from whatever state they want and make a political statement. But they should be really careful about that political statement and how that plays with their primary audience.
I don't think liberals can win this argument because when you look at the sonogram from 12 weeks that you showed up, I don't see a clump of cells. Technology shows us a baby with a heartbeat. And how long you deny that, good luck.
All right, a story we'll be talking about a lot in the days ahead. Meanwhile, country star John Rich surging right now on the music charts with his new song with a little assist from the Five.
Shut up.
Recorded, she reacts to the song's surging popularity, and it's all for charity. That's coming up. And we are back with some quick headlines. A woman gets an unwelcome dinner guest. Take a look at this one. If Jed was there, she would have run screaming from the table.
Yes.
An 11-foot.
Oh, you would have charged it?
I would have charged it. An 11-foot alligator burst through a window into her kitchen. Luckily, no one was hurt, just some spilled wine.
Oof.
Whoa.
And officers in Clearwater, Florida, safely captured and removed that thrashing beast.
That Ed would have charged.
And if dinner with a gator is not your thing, how about drinks with rats?
Ooh.
I'm not talking about Pete. A San Francisco bar offering patrons a chance to party with the rodents.
Yes.
A $50 ticket gets you a rat-themed cocktail and 30 minutes of playtime with the critters. Is this real? They can be adopted.
Oh.
The promotion runs from June 13th.
Now that I would do.
I do like
that?
Ratatouille, so there's
Yeah,
that.
they're not
I
that
do.
bad. Not that bad. All right, well.
Pete's not a rat. He's a good guy.
Hiding Joe Biden skipping California's Democratic convention this weekend.
The 2020 Democratic frontrunner will not be joining the 14 other presidential hopefuls who will be speaking at the event. So where is Joe?
Yeah, where is Joe? Let's ask. Well, we found one Joe. His name is Joe Concha. Hey, Joe.
Hey,
He's
Joe.
right there. He's live on Fox and Friends, media reporter for The Hill, radio talk show host as well. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Call me Conch so we don't confuse things.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
Joe.
Conch, where in the world is Joe Biden? Is this a smart strategy for Democrats? I mean, I get that he doesn't want to answer maybe some difficult questions in the early days that the left wants him to answer. But if you survive the primary with sort of this rope-a-dope strategy, what happens in the general?
In the general, we'll see what happened with Hillary Clinton, Ed, and you followed Hillary Clinton on that campaign. You remember August of that year, she only did a handful of campaign events while Donald Trump outworked her 3-1, 4-1 in terms of rallies, and that's what began to turn that race around. Look, that's a long time away, but Joe Biden playing it safe at this point tells me that he's not confident in terms of the answers that he'll give and this tightrope that he has to walk between appeasing the left wing of the party and what they want in terms of impeachment, what they want in terms of 16-year-olds voting or the Electoral College being gone or prisoners being able to vote, all those things. He doesn't want to answer those questions, but he's going to have to when we get to the debates later this month. He's going to be on a stage, and that's when the whole ball game begins, guys.
Well, here's, go ahead.
Now, check out this quote from Alexandra Gallardo-Rooker, chairwoman the California Democrat chairwoman. So I want to get your response. Vice President Biden called me personally on Wednesday. We had an 11-minute conversation. He wanted to be here, but he's being pulled all over the place, as many of our top candidates are. And what he wanted to express to me is that California was very important. He's been there. He will be here many times. This sounds like the most ridiculous explanation to me, Joe. Although I do think it's smart because he's very gaffe prone. He has a huge lead. And I think they figure the less Biden talks, the better.
That's probably a good thing given his past. Certainly, he's been a horrible candidate, guys. Remember, I think the last time he ran, he got 1% of the vote in Iowa. He's run several times before and hasn't finished higher than 7th. And as we've seen, he's not Barack Obama in terms of the way he presented himself on stage and at rallies. He's not Donald Trump in terms of being able to connect with people on a very real and authentic level. So Joe Biden's the front runner because of name recognition, because he was vice president, because people want a safe choice. But safe doesn't win. Mitt Romney was a safe candidate. John McCain was a safe candidate. John Kerry was a safe candidate. And obviously Hillary Clinton was a safe candidate. Safe doesn't win. Bold wins. You have to have a message. And Joe Biden doesn't have one right now outside of, let's get things back to, let's make America normal again. No, that doesn't put food on the table, guys. I'm sorry.
So when's the next time that Joe Biden will be forced out of hiding? Will it be the debates?
Yeah, I think in 4 weeks, he's going to have to show up for that, right? But otherwise, as Ed mentioned, he hasn't done any real interviews yet. I mean, if you want to call taking questions from Joy Behar tough questions, no, I don't think so. So he's going to have to do the 60 Minutes. He's going to have to sit down with the Chris Wallaces and Ed Henrys and Brett Bairs of the world, and he's going to have to start defining who he is. After 40 years in politics, I still don't know who Joe Biden is at this point, outside of a guy that has failed up to the position that he's in now.
Well, he ain't hiding, Joe Concha. He came out early on Saturday.
Swinging, bold, confident. We like it, Joe. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Oh, no, thank you. It was tough getting here with the traffic, but we did get here. And
we made it. All good.
All right, well, how's this for irony?
Oh, here we
Hillary Clinton headlining a cybersecurity summit. What? This is not an Onion article. This is not a joke. What does the former DNC chair have to say about this? Down to Brazil.
Our children so they can be the next DACA recipients. This all started in his presidency, and as far as Kamala Harris and Gillibrand and these congressmen and senators, the Bernie Sanders, all these front runners, they failed American people because this whole problem exists because as Congress, they failed to close the loopholes that entice people to come and that's driving this surge on the border. I've been up on the Hill for the last 2 years trying to get them to close the loopholes. So every one of these people, they've already failed the American people.
They want DACA 2.0 and DACA 3.0. They want the next versions of DACA.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tom, what do you make?
You got Kristen Gillibrand wants to. The families are coming. Bring a child. You won't be detained because very few get detained. What's your answer? Let's not detain anybody. I mean, that is the worst answer possible. I mean, it's just ridiculous what these presidential hopefuls are even talking about.
Tom, the president has now turned to this 5% tariff on Mexico to begin soon. And he's done this because he's been, in my opinion, backed into a corner, has gotten no cooperation from Democrats. Obviously, now he's up against the courts. What do you make of this decision? Good decision, bad decision?
It's a great decision. I mean, Mexico, we talked on this show many times. Because of the failures of Congress and these people who's running for president, and because of their failures, and because the courts are fighting against this president every time he makes an executive action, this president, look, he's not only talking the talk as a president that he's going to fix the border. He's actually walking the walk. He's declared executive actions. He's put resources on the border in immense numbers. He wrote an immigration plan that no one is even talking about. He's done everything he can to try to address this crisis on border and keep his promise. So, look, the Mexican government is not doing enough. We talked about many times. Criminal cartels in Mexico are operating with impunity. I mean, in broad daylight, they're trafficking in women and children, which is illegal in the country of Mexico.
And people should be outraged about that. Yeah, people should be outraged about the trafficking, the abuse of women, the abuse of children. Here's what Mexico's president says, though. Social problems are not resolved with taxes or coercive measures. The Statue of Liberty is not an empty symbol. Tom, what do you think about the Mexican president lecturing the American president, the American people maybe, about American values?
He ought to stop concentrating on American values and concentrating on corruption in his own government. Criminal cartels in Mexico are operating with impunity because law enforcement, the military, many in the federal government down there are corrupt. Let's just face it. I mean, I've been doing this 30 years, and we've always had this same issue. And I would tell the president of Mexico this. Bad behavior stops when there's consequences and deterrence. So unless you have a consequence deterrent, the bad behavior continues. This president is trying to put consequences. If you violate the laws of this country, if you come here and commit immigration fraud, we're going to hold you accountable.
Tom,
And
can I
he's
ask you a
holding
serious
Mexico
question, though?
accountable now.
If the president's moves, you believe, have serious consequences and are going to stop this, why are more people than ever, record numbers, crossing our southern border? Why has it gotten worse, essentially, in terms of apprehensions and what we're seeing under the president who you're supporting?
Because he's trying to add consequences, but the courts keep holding him up. Look, he tried to fix the asylum, say you can't enter the country legally to claim asylum, you need to go to port of entry. That was held up. He's trying to detain people, but the Ninth Circuit says you can't detain people over 20 days. Everything he's done to add consequences to this has been held up in the courts. And the Congress has failed to address anything. Look, he's the only guy addressing the border crisis. Give me one idea, give me one example of anybody in Democratic leadership offering up one idea of what's going on the border. As you said, children are dying, women are being raped. You know, we're at an all-time high in crossings of families and the most vulnerable of people. Drug cartels are making billions of dollars, and Democratic leadership has offered up what?
Yeah,
no, they're not even talking about it.
Well, they won't appropriate for additional housing and beds to deal with this crisis. You talk about Congress, you talk about the crisis. Even if Obama administration officials are recognizing that it is. But there's one piece of evidence we want to put in front of you that sort of underscores what a crisis it is. It's overcrowding at the El Paso del Norte Processing Center. So this is a place on May 7th, it was holding 750 detainees. The next day, May 8th, 900 detainees. The kicker on this is that the maximum capacity all along has been 125 people. So the agents there are doing the best they can, but if your resources are that constrained, it's only going to get more difficult.
Exactly, and because they've had to pull so many border patrol agents off the line to deal with these families and medical runs and taking care of the most vulnerable, 40% of every Border Patrol agent, 4 out of 10, are not on the line. They're in the stations taking care of these people. So think about the vulnerability on the border right now. As I said many times, the criminal cartels are managing who comes across, where they come across. So knowing 40% of the border is off the border, and knowing they'll push that group of 1,000 in El Paso and keep the Border Patrol tied up so they can move drugs and bad people to another area that don't want to get caught by the Border Patrol. Our border is very vulnerable right now. We're in a state of crisis. If we don't make some changes very soon, we're going to lose this border because ICE is ran out of beds. And if they have to start releasing single adults, then all bets off. Because when you start releasing single adults, and you're going to get the whole world coming here to take advantage. Because that's the one population that remained pretty steady. And that group of 1,000, only 40 more single adults. Because single adults are being detained.
Only 40
but if we start releasing single adults, we'll be out of control. We will lose the border, and we won't get it back.
Coming to us live from a border state there in Arizona, getting up extra early to be on Fox and Friends. We appreciate it, sir.
You know your stuff. Thank you, Tom.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We are turning to some headlines for you now. A body found in Arkansas is believed to be missing 4-year-old Malia Davis. Her stepfather led police to the area where he admitted to dumping the little girl. Davis was reported missing in Texas last month. Darian Vance is in jail on tampering charges in connection with the case. A lawyer for Facebook making a bizarre claim about the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The attorney argues the 87 million users affected in the breach did not have their privacy invaded because they have no expectation of privacy on the site. The argument was slammed by the judge, who noted the social media giant has repeatedly promised to protect users' data. An accountant for the alleged mastermind behind the college admissions scandal is agreeing to plead guilty. Rick Singer's bookkeeper is accused of collecting money from parents disguised as charity donations and using them to bribe administrators for tests like the SAT. 50 people have been charged in the case, including actress Felicity Huffman, who pleaded guilty to paying $15,000 to rig her daughter's SAT score. And special counsel Robert Mueller isn't the only Mueller making political headlines. This adorable golden retriever, Max Mueller II, is the mayor of his Southern California town. Oh yeah, the town has been electing dogs as its mayor for several years to promote their local animal shelter. Mueller's oath of office reads, "I, Max, do swear on my food bowl to faithfully execute my duties as mayor of Idlewild." Hopefully I said that right. Those are your headlines. I fully support this. Perhaps next we'll see dogs for president. It could happen.
I wonder if young Mueller will come out and make a statement this week.
It could happen.
Yeah.
I can't even speak.
Rick, you love dogs.
Listen, dogs are the most loyal, honest, I was going to say people, but entities that I have encountered. It would be a good deviation from the political norm. Rick?
True, but I think their platform might be a little bit off base.
Little slanted.
Little slanted?
Skewed. Yeah.
Is there like a lieutenant mayor that actually does the work?
Listen, good food and naps sound good to me.
Less government is better government, so I'm all for it.
There
That's
you
true,
go.
Pete. This is right up your alley, Pete. I got to tell you. All right, guys, let's talk some weather because there's a lot going on, including all of the rain that we've had across parts of the Central Plains and a little bit of a cool. Look at the weather map, show you what I'm talking about. Temps have been so hot all across the southeast. You're aware of it for the better part of 2 weeks. A bit of a front has passed through, and take a look at that. It's 68 degrees right now in Atlanta, and the humidity is down, so it feels almost like fall. Get outside and enjoy this morning. It's not going to last too long. Precipitation-wise, things are pretty good in the central part of the country where we've had all that rain over the last, say, 2 weeks. Or say 6 months, but the last 2 weeks, it's dry right now. And out across the west, things are also looking pretty dry. So right now, things are pretty calm. That doesn't mean the flooding is gone. If you're there, you're aware we've got flood stages well above major across the Arkansas River, the Mississippi River, some of them into the record level stage. So that doesn't change anytime soon. And unfortunately, the rain returns. So the weekend, not that bad. But take a look at what happens this coming week. We've got the rain going right back to the exact same spots. That means our flooding threat is going to continue for the better part of this coming week. One last story. Today is the beginning of hurricane season. It goes now through November 30th. Expecting average hurricane activity this year. In June, normally you might see about every couple of years some sort of a tropical system. Take a look at that right there just in towards the Gulf of Mexico. A little bit of tropical activity. We're going to watch for development. And that could increase our moisture as well across parts of the Central Plains later on this week. All right, guys, back to you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Rick.
Rick.
Appreciate it.
Who let the dogs out? All right. A historian.
You thought that up the whole time.
You were thinking about that the whole time.
A historian who correctly predicted the last 9 presidential elections says President Trump will be reelected in 2020 unless Democrats do this.
The Democrats grow a spine and do their constitutional duty and move into an impeachment inquiry.
Wow. Is this why Democrats are so obsessed with impeachment? Matt Schlapp sounds off on that. Coming up.
Professor and historian Alan Lichtman has correctly called the last 9 presidential elections, and he's predicting re-election for President Trump in 2020, except for one thing.
You think Trump is it in 2020 unless what?
Unless the Democrats grow a spine and do their constitutional duty and move into an impeachment inquiry. And I think the evidence will show ultimately an impeachment.
So is that why Democrats keep pushing impeachment? Here to react, chairman of the American Conservative Union and former White House political director for President George W. Bush, Matt Schlapp. Matt, talk about an admission that you can't win on the issues. I mean, that's what that sounds like to me, what he just said.
Yeah, and it's important to remember what the criteria this professor uses to determine his prediction on who's going to win. And it's all like kind of like it's a scientific formula on the growth of the economy, the unemployment rate, and this data that is not subjective, Jedediah. So here's what this means. It means a coup is the only way the Democrats can get rid of Donald Trump, because the number one reason why people vote for president in America is on the strength of the economy and the pocketbook and how do they feel about their economic situation and their kids' economic situation. And President Trump has been over 50% in his approval on the economy for a very long period of time. People feel more confident about the American economy than it did at any time during the Obama administration.
So let's just say Democrats go with impeachment. Let's say they do it. Let's say they're successful in that endeavor. What does that look like for them? How does that play out?
Well, here's the problem, Jedediah, for the Democrats is that Nancy Pelosi, some people believe she got the majority in the House because of people like AOC. But the real truth is that they won in a lot of more purple House districts with more moderate members than it appears like these national Democrats who are saying absolutely crazy socialist radical things. So if you look at impeachment, you have this more radicalized voice in the House and Senate that are pushing their leaders to, quote unquote, grow a spine, as the professor said, which means coup. But the reason why the Democrats have a majority in the House is because a lot of moderate voters in these districts turn to them. Those moderate voters don't believe that we should drag this country through a year of impeachment hearings and proceedings and not focus on what actually ails the country, the problems of the country, and try to fix it. So they're in a really tough spot. You know, sometimes it seems like Nancy Pelosi actually seems like she might be the more calming factor,
yes.
which is an amazing thing to say.
How times have changed, Matt. How times have changed.
Right.
And Obama's sounding like a moderate lately compared to AOC and the rest of the crew. I'm just wondering why they're so afraid.
He has better marketing. He has better marketing.
Yes, but why are Democrats so afraid? Listen, if you support the Green New Deal, if you support Medicare for all, if you believe that those things will help the country, if you support economic plans that are in drastic opposition to the ones that President Trump has put forth because you actually believe that they will work, my sense is that you wouldn't be terrified to go out there and talk about them. It seems to me like they are admitting that those things will not work and will not appeal to American voters right now, which is why they're completely silent on them. And all they're talking about is impeachment and investigations 24 hours a day.
Ideology. It's all their socialist idealism. The problem with it is it hurts people when they put it in practice. And there's a little bit of a fracture in that majority. So they really can't get any of these things done because even not all Democrats want to be socialists.
It's all very utopian and academic, Matt.
It sure is. And scary. And scary.
Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate your input as always.
Thank you.
Protesters tried to silence our next guest while speaking at a college campus. Now a new study reveals just what students think about free speech. Michael Knowles weighs in coming up next.
Welcome back. Well, how much free expression is there really on college campuses? A newly released study of more than 4,000 students attempts to shed some light. 41% say hate speech should not be protected by the First Amendment, while another 68% agree students can't share their true opinions on campus. Nearly 7 in 10 can't share it. Our next guest has some experience being protested on campus. Liquid was thrown at him while he was speaking on the University of Missouri-Kansas City in April. Michael Knowles joins us now. Michael, thanks for being here. So my understanding of the First Amendment is it's not there to protect the easy speech. It's there to protect the stuff we don't like. Why don't kids get that?
Of course. If the First Amendment doesn't protect so-called hate speech, then what's the point of it? You don't need a constitutional amendment to protect popular speech. You need it to protect speech that is unpopular, which some people might define as hateful, but then who's the one who's doing that defining? The problem here is primarily one of ignorance. Thomas Jefferson said that a nation that wants to remain ignorant and free in a state of civilization is hoping for something that never was and never will be. But according to another survey, just 40% of Americans can name any of the rights protected by the First Amendment. Only 56% know that the First Amendment protects free speech. This is a problem primarily of ignorance. Another survey showed that students graduating from elite colleges know less about their civics, less about their government than they did when they were going in. As President Reagan said, freedom is not passed in the bloodstream. You have to teach the next generation. If you don't do it, we're going to lose it very soon.
Michael, you've seen this firsthand. But you mentioned Thomas Jefferson. You know, he's not. You can't have him anymore. They're protesting him. But you talked about it's ultimately who's doing the deciding. Who's the one that decides what's hate speech? And in our politically correct world, which it often is, who is making that call?
Of course, when I was physically assaulted at the University of Missouri-Kansas City, the phrase that was considered hate speech is the phrase, men are not women. If you say, I gave another speech at Cal State LA, I said that the United States should have national borders. I was protested and told that that was hate speech. It's always a subjective question when it comes to what is hate speech and therefore what shouldn't be protected. The argument that they make is that certain speech is violent and it harms people. But actually, there was a study last year, 2018, that showed that so-called trigger warnings and safe spaces and all of this censorship is actually harming the students that it intends to help because it leaves them psychologically fragile. They should learn that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Michael, I'll go out on a limb and say you are a man, maybe the man. Okay, Michael, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Pete.
All right.